another Ants on a Rock video. Welcome to the Ant Corner. As I said in my last Polyrhachis Dives video, I need to create a new setup. I wanted to create a naturalistic setup in a tank with suitable spaces for them to weave their nest and forage freely. So this is what I came up with. I couldn't wait to make this video, so I hope you enjoy it. I managed to get hold of this tank relatively cheap. It's a decent size, it's not massive, but it's enough room for my colony as it is at the moment. It also has a lid with a light in. This will help maintain the humidity and temperature. For this build I need driftwood, some leaf litter, some freshly picked moss sent in this bag. Also, this has been picked from a sustainable source where they use no pesticides. My trusty bag of sphagnum moss. This is useful for many different things, including retaining moisture and helping the humidity in the tanks. Next I have the plants. I think you pronounce this as Setonia. It's going to be pink when it blooms. Should be pretty. This one has a really long name that I'm not even going to try, but it's a fern. It's not actually as tall as I was hoping, but it's still a really good plant. Again, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of this plant, but it's going to be transplanted out of this tank and into the new one. Next I'm going to need some activated carbon or charcoal of some description. This is to help purify the toxins as the water passes through the substrate and into the drainage layer. This log ornament came with the tank, so I might utilise it. Not entirely sure, as it wasn't planned as part of the build. We'll see how it goes. I also need gravel, because this is the first step. So it's just a matter of placing a few inches of gravel in the bottom of the tank. This creates a drainage layer and is really important to a healthy terrarium. Stop when you're happy with the depth. It needs to be a couple of inches. Next, I get a separating layer. This is just a bin liner, a black bag that I've cut out to the right size and I've scored lots of holes for it. It's slightly larger than the bottom of the tank, so that the sides go up slightly. This is so that no substrate leaks through and causes a soppy mess in the bottom. On top of that, I add in my layer of activated carbon. This needs to roughly cover the entire of the bottom. As I said before, this purifies the water of any toxins and prevents any dangerous mold outbreaks. Next, I went in with a layer of sphagnum moss. This is to help retain a lot of the moisture and keep the tank really humid for the species that I'm going to be keeping in there. I try to add more depth to one side to help maintain the humidity higher on one side of the tank. Earlier today I made up my substrate mix. There's a link in the description below. Follow it to find out how I made my mix and what exactly goes into it. It's really simple and really easy. So I start with a base layer of substrate first, covering all the sphagnum moss. And then I went in to place the plants. I didn't take them out the pots at this point, because I'm just placing them and playing around till I get a view that I like. I like this log, but trying to put it in, it just seemed really big, clumpy and sort of in the way. This was sort of a good position, but it would take up a lot of space, and really I didn't want it. So I did decide to take this out of the other tank. It's just a little hollow jug. It's got a few holes in each side, and it might make a good place for the Polyrhachis dives to weave their nest. So I'm going to place that just behind the Setonia, so I've got a plan for this. Next I went in with the driftwood and hardscape to really develop the plan in my head. I struggled for a while to get the look that I wanted. I had something in my mind and I just couldn't get it right. I think the driftwood was just slightly too short for what I originally had planned. Eventually I made up my mind and it was time to start planting. So I started with a fern. I squeezed it and gently eased it out of the pot. Putting it down in the back corner. And piling some dirt around it to hold it in place and keep it nice and healthy. So I took out the other parts and continued to add more depth to the soil around the fern. The plan was to create sort of a mound on this side of the tank. You'll see why in a minute. So that's starting to look good and it's nice and firm in place. And then I wanted to add more depth to the left hand side to mirror the right. I then took this minute to wedge the pot into the soil, facing this way out. And then I continued to bury it. Next I added the Setonia. This is going to be at the base of the mound on the left. So this goes in here. There was actually 3 in the pot, so I spaced them out around the tank. And then I added the plant from the other tank. This is quite an easy job. Just quickly pulled it up and placed it straight in. Luckily, a few isopods came with it, so they're already in the tank now. I added lots more of my substrate all around the base of the Setonias and the base of this other plant, adding more and more height and depth to this mound. My next job was to go in with the driftwood. My plan for it was to make a bridge sort of between the two mounds, creating almost a cave underneath, which I could then fill with moss. After a lot of messing around with it, I finally got it to what I liked. I was happy with how this looked, so I went to add some of my moss into the cave I'd created underneath. Having done this, I then proceeded to add a second piece of driftwood, pointing up vertically against the side there. I made sure I pushed it firmly down into the substrate, so it's not going to fall over anytime soon. Then it was time to add more texture, so I added some more mosses all over the little mounds that I created. I think this looks really cool. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you think. If you like the build, if you don't like the build, if you think there's anything I could have done better. Personally, I already think there's a few things I could have done better. I would have liked a slight bit more height, maybe slightly bigger plants, and a bigger piece of driftwood. Apart from that, I'm really happy with how this build has turned out. So for the next step, I got some of my sphagnum moss and I stuffed it into the empty hollow pot. Hopefully, if the ants decide to nest in there, they will enjoy the sphagnum moss that's already in there. After that, it was time to add a bit of decoration. So I broke up some sphagnum moss and scattered it all around the foraging area. And then I added some stones from the gravel mix. I did some scattered about, and then I did some small concentrated piles. This will give it texture and diversity, which is important to a good terrarium. Next was the turn of the leaf. I didn't need much, just a few leaves scattered about would be more than enough to provide ample building material if they needed it. I had some leftover sand as well, so I added this in for more texture and diversity. Overall, I think this tank looks really cool. I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. It's got lots of cool plants in there, lots of space for them to climb and run around foraging. I've got humidity probes that I've put in 3 different places to make sure that we're at the right temperature and humidity at all times. We've got caves and pots with places for them to nest and more places for them to forage. I've placed in the water feeder and a honey water feeder that I got from Ant's Hood. They're a really quality product and I've been using them with all my different ant colonies, and he's been a great help as well. So check out his page via the link in the description below. And don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a little message. See you again, ant fans.